Good evening. David, thank you very much for the introduction. It's an honor to be here, and particularly with so many of my close friends and distinguished mentors from the diplomatic service. And Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for representing Indonesia at the Nuclear Security Summit and for joining us here this evening. I know that you, like I, appreciate the work that the US-Indonesia Society and all the people here tonight do to maintain and to deepen the close relationship between the United States and Indonesia. And I'll tell you very frankly that we need the support, the active engagement, the insights, the advice of the US-Indonesia Society, of USINDO. We value it, and we need the support and the wisdom of all the folks here in the room, including, importantly, the private sector. Now, I, in my job, have had the honor and the opportunity to travel to Indonesia with President Obama each time he's gone, with former Secretary Clinton, with Secretary Kerry. I've gone often on my own. We understand, we recognize, and we respect the important role that Indonesia plays in the region and in the world. And the story of how this country of 240 million people spread over 17,000 islands worked through the real trials of the 20th century to forge an influential, a stable, a multi-ethnic, a united, and a democratic nation, that's a remarkable story. And the story of Indonesia's commitment to human rights, to the rule of law, to religious tolerance, to pluralism, that's a remarkable story, and it's a story that needs to be told not only here, but globally. So is the story of the very modest son of a craftsman who rose to the pinnacle of power through a legitimate, open, democratic process. That's a story that needs to be told. And I've watched, Mr. Vice President, with great admiration when I traveled to Jakarta for the inauguration with Secretary Kerry. As you and Pak President, Pak Jokowi, were inaugurated, and as your predecessors stepped aside willingly, responsibly, gracefully, to respect the will of the people who chose you. That was a remarkable story. It's an inspirational story. And as someone who works for a president who himself is a Pacific Islander, who spent his childhood in Indonesia, who still misses your food and your people, who still speaks your language, I've worked with my colleagues to help the United States to sharpen our focus on the Asia-Pacific region in a sustained way, and to strengthen our important bilateral relationship with Indonesia and our equally important relationship with ASEAN, of which Indonesia is a founding member and a very important leader. This is something that we're proud of. But as proud as we are, we're not resting on our laurels, because going forward, Indonesia's success matters to us as well. This is something that we, the US government, needs to work on. And there are a lot of reasons why it matters to us. One is, as my own close friend and deputy, Scott Marcial, who's just left Washington to take up his assignment in Yangon as the US ambassador to Myanmar, can attest, Indonesia's example of democratic transition, its example of tolerance and pluralism, is an inspiration to countries like Myanmar. And we hope and need other countries in the region to follow that example. Your youthful population positions Indonesia for even stronger growth in the decades ahead. And your geographic position, connecting the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, places Indonesia uniquely at the crossroads of global commerce and global growth. And your economy, the biggest in ASEAN, makes it an important destination for American companies and investors, as the impressive turnout here demonstrates. American companies have a long history of partnership with Indonesia, to which they all remain committed. Between 2004 and 2012, U.S. businesses invested more than $65 billion in Indonesia, making the U.S. Indonesia's largest investor, larger than Japan, larger than Korea, larger than China. And this is positive investment. This is investment in your communities, in your companies, in your people, in your society. This is investment that creates wealth, that creates benefits, that leaves behind educated, trained, talented people, not wreckage, not half-built factories, not environmental degradation. U.S. companies employ something on the order of 200,000 Indonesian citizens. And more importantly, the overall impact of the presence of U.S. firms has meant in the neighborhood of 2 million additional jobs for Indonesians. Now, as Ambassador Merrill mentioned, President Jokowi visited Washington in October. We were pleased and proud to host him. His visit to the United States generated over $20 billion in deals and investments. Real deals, real investments. Those aren't empty promises. They are real projects creating real jobs in both of our countries, increasing access to energy and improving the lives of our citizens. I'd also make the point that the fact that our two-way trade in goods last year was only about $27 billion. That is not much. That is not high. But the fact that it was low means there is tremendous headroom for growth. And it's that growth that we're aiming at. We want to see those numbers grow. Our companies want to be able to invest more and to do more business in Indonesia. That's the reason why there is enthusiasm for your administration's fight against corruption, your administration's push for good governance, because that fight, that push is what creates the optimal conditions for investment, and we thank you for your work. That's why there's enthusiasm for your administration's economic reform efforts, for streamlining the bureaucracy, for eliminating conflicting and overlapping regulations. Yeah, there's more to do, but we appreciate your work. That's why President Jokowi's announcement of Indonesia's interest in joining the TPP is so important to both of us and to the region. That's why we are so pleased to welcome you here, Mr. Vice President. These are all signs that Indonesia is raising its game to contribute and to compete both regionally and globally. I went with President Obama in 2010 when he visited Jakarta, when he launched the U.S.-Indonesia Comprehensive Partnership. I was here last October when President Jokowi visited, and we upgraded that partnership to the strategic level. Now our two countries work together more than ever before on regional and global challenges like maritime security, like infectious diseases, like public health, like fighting terrorism and countering violent extremism. This is a pressing challenge where Indonesia has a tremendous amount of experience to contribute, where we have a lot to learn from you. And we cooperate on nuclear security, and your participation, Mr. Vice President, in the Nuclear Security Summit is important. The comments and the contributions that you made yesterday add real value to what is a collective effort for all of us, mindful of the risk of fissile material falling into the hands of terrorist groups. So on all of these issues, we can and must cooperate. We cooperate in the context of a strategic partnership, and what makes it strategic is that we have a vision of where we want to go. We have a vision of what kind of world we want to live in. And the fact that we have differences, the fact that we have similarities. We're a multi-ethnic nation with a broad geographic span, so are you. We're a diverse nation with a variety of religions, a tradition of tolerance, so are you. But the fact that we have both similarities and differences is what makes our vision and our partnership strategic. We learn from each other. And when we work together, we set an example for the world that proves that intolerance and bigotry and zealots who willfully misread gospel or doctrine or dogma will not and cannot prevail in our world. I would add that in the strategic partnership, USINDO plays a real role, a role that we value, working to expand the non-governmental track. Because while governments can do a lot, we can do a lot more in partnership with the private sector and with civil society. So we welcome USINDO's work to expand and to tap the strength of civil society in both of our countries, particularly, I'd add, the Council on Religion and Pluralism. This is a tremendously innovative bilateral mechanism that has already made headway in promoting respect for religions, promoting respect for pluralism, which is really at the heart of a stable society and a genuine democratic tradition. So our record of growing cooperation, the tremendous growth and strength in the U.S.-Indonesia relationship, this is a good news story. And the other piece of good news I have for you is that I'm going to stop talking so they can bring out the entree. But in all seriousness, I thank you, and particularly, Vice President, I thank you so much for honoring us with your visit at a beautiful moment in Washington's spring season. And I thank you so much for all that you're doing for your country and for our relationship. Thank you all.